welcome back. We're here with Jordan from Vantage Point Strategies. Jordan, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. We met at the Small Business Expo during the speed networking. So thank you so much for coming on, man. I'm very excited to dive into your niche of a business. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great meeting you, and I'm glad and excited for this.
Yes, me too. So can you dive into what does a CFO actually do?
Yes. So, for it to be such a short acronym, it's obviously, comes with a lot more than just finances. But a little bit about kind of what my day-to-day looks like as a CFO for small businesses. It's not just managing financials as far as, what's our revenue, what's our bottom line. It's so much more, right? So I get to dive into operations, making sure we're servicing clients depending on the business, making sure products are being produced efficiently, working with vendors. So I get to kind of touch a bunch of points as a CFO. And ultimately, what I do is take the vision of an owner um, or their team as a whole. I take that vision and just expand upon it, right? And make sure that financially it's able to happen. But then I get to, deal with the headaches of, like I said, working with vendors, making sure operationally they function well. So a little bit of all of that.
It sounds like to me that you are also more of like on a consulting capacity of like not only like I cover the finances, but I want to make sure that every other aspect of your business is operating properly so the finances the aspect also runs smoothly. Is that correct?
Precisely, right? Like, for example, in a service-based business, I can manage your finances, right, in a construction business. But it means nothing if, my project managers aren't making sure that we're collecting our invoices, right? Or if they're not sticking to a budget, because of, working with a vendor. It means nothing to me to manage your finances and those things aren't going according to plan.
So outside of that finance aspect, where do you think small businesses lack or need to improve on outside of just the looking at the budgeting side of things?
Yeah, a lot of it is just strategy, right? And creating a plan of where you want to go. A lot of businesses I sit down with, and even current owners I work with, you ask them, where do you want your business to go? And a lot of them don't get past the point of, oh, I just want to have something to pass to my kids, and
Yeah.
that's great, but what does that mean? Is there a revenue target you want to hit? Is there an amount of people you want to service? Is there a product goal you have? Like really building a roadmap is something a lot of business owners don't do. And you can't manage finances of, a endless road, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting because I think a lot of small businesses, they don't really think about this side of business, right? Like you mentioned, they're like, I just want to build a business and then hand it off. When you do go step into a new business, what is like the first two or three things that you really sit down with them to make sure that they have in line to succeed for the future?
I would say first things first is I want to know how many people truly work for you, right? Like a lot of small businesses you can have, well, I have family member here, family member there. And if you look at payroll, you're inconsistent. So that's a big thing. And then I want to target and hone down on what do you do? Even at a, general contractor, I use that example because it's the easiest to describe, but general contractors do so much, but what's the primary core of what you do? Is your service, are you really just a roofing business that also does, home maintenance on the side? Or are you truly just a plumbing business that occasionally does HVAC stuff? Whatever it may be, I really need to know those two things, right? Who works for you and what do you really do? And then we can create a realistic financial roadmap, to match up with the strategy.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So you're kind of like on the back end, kind of laying out the strategy, and then the small business acts as like the operator where they're doing like the day to day work, the invoicing, the, like the scheduling, the hiring, and you're more just kind of like on the background of like, let's build this vision. Here's what we need to go to make that happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And still being involved in those decisions, right? Even on a hiring capacity, right? Because it does impact finances.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting because everything impacts finances
Exactly.
as you
Yes.
probably see a lot. And
Yes.
what are some things that you think impact finances that small businesses don't think of?
Definitely headcount, I think is the biggest thing. They from what I've seen personally with these small businesses, a lot of them don't realize this is something you're consistently responsible for. And, whether you then have the whole benefits package, payroll that comes with that, right? So how you're paying people, as well as a lot of them don't really understand the cost of what they do. And that there's always a better cost, right? For example, again, contractors is just easy to talk about, but working with certain vendors is not beneficial at all. They're overcharging you and they know they're overcharging you. Even on the product side, right? Working with food and beverage companies, so cafes and stuff. I recently got in that space, and a lot of them don't realize you can actually not pay as much as you do. You just got to do a little more research, right? And you have to kind of have the legwork, which is hiring someone like myself. I'm willing to do that legwork, right? Because we have a goal that we set together. There's a financial steps that go with that, and I will help you get there. So those, I would say, are the big things, is definitely payroll and cost of what you really sell.
Very interesting. And one thing we've kind of dove into is, can you talk about the difference between hiring a W-2 employee versus a 1099, and what are the benefits of like just both in general?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of what you do, right? Obviously, the biggest distinction is you hire a W-2, you're now responsible for their benefits packages. You're responsible for the tax side. 1099, you obviously are handing that off to them, right?
Yeah.
My recommendation is, what is their role in the company? How much are they worth to you? Because essentially when you're handing off those processes to someone, you kind of declared their value, right? I hate to be that guy, but you kind of declared what they are to your purpose. So for business owners, I always push for the W-2 side. If you have the revenue to do it, right? You obviously need the revenue, you need the profit to do it. If you don't, that's fine. Do the 1099 side, but don't ask this person to break their back for you, and you're not breaking your back for them, is what I would like to say.
Absolutely. And one thing you are huge on is making data-driven decisions. Can you kind of dive more into why you think that's an important aspect to look at?
Yes. So I just a slight background is I come from, the corporate realm, right? So I've been at a big bank, the largest custodian bank. I've worked at two, major retail fashion brands in the finance space. We did nothing without data, in both of those industries, you do nothing without data. And I have a target that I have to uphold, right? At my last role, in the corporate space, I was, overseeing a corporate vision. I can't make decisions on where we go without the data behind it, right? And so with small businesses especially, I refuse to just make a emotional decision, right? Or a hunch decision. It's like, what are the numbers saying? Are you really making that much money? Yes, your revenue is great, but your margin sucks. Well, then you're making no money. Effectively you made nothing. So that's why we're so big at VPS about doing that.
And was there anything when you were working in the corporate world, especially at a bank, that you took from there? I mean, you explained one, of your lessons, but was there like anything else like that you really took from the corporate world and said, okay, like I'm going to now use that like to run my own small business?
Ironically, I think the things you take most from coming from corporate are the people skills.
Okay, interesting.
And especially myself, right? You're going from, in the corporate role, you're at an associate level, right? Just with my age. And then now you're moving to, I'm working with, $20 million construction company as an executive, right? So you don't tend to realize that you picked up so many lessons from your higher ups, right? And working so closely with them at, a bank, I'm working with head of divisions for the entire global bank. In the retail space, I worked with the CFO, the CEO, the COO of the brand. And you realize you pick up little skills from them on how to manage people and how to manage expectations, even of people who own the business per se, right?
Yeah. And how did that feel with your first couple of clients, going from the corporate world of kind of being that associate to then working with those large clients? Like, how did that kind of feel, like kind of transferring from being like low on the totem pole to now talking to the owners of these businesses?
It's a little bit, you experience that imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
You kind of forget that you are skilled at what you do and realize that okay, maybe I'm not capable, right? It's kind of my first thought. And then I'm having these conversations and I'm watching someone across the table be like, okay, this makes sense. Now we've never thought of that, or we actually never have tried that before. And then you're like, oh, okay, I did learn everything I was supposed to learn, right? I did pick up the right lessons on how to communicate effective value, right? So for me, it was like getting over that hump of this imposter syndrome into, everything you needed to know. You just were sitting in the corporate hierarchy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which I feel like can sometimes or always crush your soul a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
For sure. So can you kind of dive into why finances, why money, like why not go do something else? Like why did you decide to get into the financial sector as a small business owner?
Yeah, so again, with my background coming from, working at a large bank and then going to a smaller retailer and then a large global retailer, I realized I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with strategy. And then kind of through those roles, I realized the way to strategy is to sit in the financial chair. You get to impact every part of a business, whether it's marketing, at that level, I should say. You work with the entire marketing team, you work with the entire ops team, entire logistics, all the data teams. So when I realized that is truly what it meant to sit in the CFO chair, I knew small businesses needed someone to oversee that, right? And I was capable on the finance side, right? The technical finance side, I knew I was capable. And then coming to a small business, it's like, okay, these are the services they need and I can provide them.
So you really like being involved in every aspect possible versus just sitting in a chair and doing one thing. You would rather have your hands in like the marketing and the hiring. Like does that kind of bring like a sense of like passion or fun for you? Like is that kind of why you like gravitate towards it?
Yeah, I think it comes from I'm just a very helpful person instinctually, and I like bearing the weight of things that other people don't want to do. That's something that for me I get joy out of, and sitting in this seat I get to do that, right? And even when I don't control the decisions, it's like, hey, you want to do this? I got you. I'll go find, an extra amount of money for this month so that we can get this done. And, coming from corporate, that was my role in my last job. And then being able to do that now on a smaller scale and seeing like, yo, this impacts someone's life and their livelihood. It's just a beautiful thing.
And you wanting to help people and impact people, is this something that you've always had growing up as a kid? Is this something that you kind of learned from your parents? Like, where did this desire to want to be that resource for people, to want to impact people's life come from for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I was at dinner with my parents couple months ago. We were on a trip and we talked about this, and I know it comes from my childhood because one thing they did, and it was in a habit and then it became a lifestyle for me, is when we go to restaurants and stuff, normally you finish your food and then you pay your check, you leave, right? One thing we would always do is stack our plates, put our forks to the side, stack our cups for the server, right? And it's like this person was here to serve us something that we paid for. We were paying their tip, right? But flipping that mindset of I'm always here to serve, and then as I've gotten older, it just became life, of like,
Yeah.
I'm not here to get what I can out of you. It's like I'm here to serve as much as I can. And then in my faith, believing in Jesus Christ, it's like that was his whole mission. That is the mission of everything. So it just kind of sprawled from those little moments as a child. And now, years later, it's like that's where it comes from.
I'm glad that you brought that up because that's my next question. How has believing in Jesus and having that faith in him allowed you to push through and make it through the bad times of life?
It's everything, right? I look at my life and I didn't have the traditional route as far as where people from where I am grow up. We are in a very privileged area, I'd say, and a lot of opportunities are open to us. And for me, I kind of took the difficult path to get where I am. And that meant, moving across the country to go to school, moving again for jobs, just moving around for the next opportunity. And I think people idolize that, but what it comes with is not knowing. And so my own faith is, if I believe there's a path, right, and I know the path is given to me, I may not be able to see in front of me, but he is the light at my feet, right? So I kind of walk through those dark moments, right? Those tough times of remembering, in scripture, he is the light at my feet. So then my steps are always illuminated. I always know where I'm going as long as I'm going with him. So that's kind of how I've gotten through those moments.
So it gives you this sense of trust or this sense of belief that everything's going to be okay, even if it doesn't feel like it or even if it doesn't look like it, you know that everything's going to be okay.
Exactly. It's a temporary moment of just inconvenience, right? Like everything ultimately, all of this we're not going to go to the grave with, right? You and me, we built these platforms and it's like this ends at some point. So really it's what do I have to trust in? And it's him, because that's all I have at the end of all of this. So yeah.
And what does trusting in Jesus actually look like for you? Like, what does that mean when you say, I trust in Jesus Christ? Like, what does that actually mean for you?
Yeah, for me, I guess on a practical day-to-day level, right? It's you look at the big decisions of my life. Again, I could have gone to college anywhere. And I chose to move to, a new state. I went to FIU. For anybody, that's in South Florida. I'm from Ohio. So I had no one down there. Like that is a trust act of, hey, this is where I'm called to go. I don't know why. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it, and then even moving to New York to work, I don't have anybody up there. I'm all on my own, but I got to figure it out, so that is to me what trust is. It's being able to take that blind jump and knowing you're going to land on your feet, and you may fall, but you're going to get back up, right? Like you didn't fall for the final time is the way I look at it. So yeah.
Great answer. I love it. I have two more questions for you, Jordan. If you could have dinner with two people, one person from the past and one person from the present, who would it be and why?
That's tough. That's very tough. From the past, I think one person, and again, this is probably my banking experience, right? I definitely, something I've become curious of in the whole finance realm is like Alexander Hamilton, right? Founding BNY Mellon and working there. It's such an institution that's just ingrained into not only American history, but world history. And it stood the test of time. And I kind of want to know, was that the strategic vision? Was that supposed to happen? And kind of just all the decisions they make as a bank today. I'd love to know how he feels on that, whatever. And then from the present, I don't know. From the present, I think there's a multitude of experts you could sit with. But I think anybody kind of who's held this like presidency seat, or just a world leader as a whole, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, I'd love to know what comes with that job. The internals of what that looks like, right? Because you never get to see what do they go to bed with. And that's something that's always interested me. How are you, quote unquote, the most powerful person in the world and you go to sleep every night? I'm sure you feel it as a small business owner. There's some nights I can't sleep because I'm thinking about something and I don't nearly have that many people counting on me. So those are probably the two people I'd want to meet.
I think it's very fascinating because as we know, even just owning small businesses, there's a lot of backroom conversations that go on that the public can't know about or they can't know about right now. So I think people at that level, the amount of backroom conversations, good and bad, that go on have to be very fascinating. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we don't know on the public level, again, good and bad, that some stuff we probably shouldn't know about, like Area 51.
Yeah, exactly.
Or good stuff that is going to be coming. So I would be fascinated to see what is actually going on behind the scenes versus what's shown to the public.
Right. And what defines that decision? Even coming from a big corporation, I look at like there was conversations I was privy to that people who made significantly more than me were never privy to until it was time to find out. And it's like, why? Like, why was that the conversation that happened?
Absolutely, man. I have one more question for you.
Of course.
Why did you decide to partner with us and offer the discounts?
For me, it was kind of a no-brainer. You offered it, and for me, I'm at an early stage, especially at that time. But for me, it's if I can help someone and I can do it for a little bit less, then I don't know. I'm more fulfilled doing that, right? Like to me, it's not about the money. I could charge you a crazy retainer, but to have a platform where it doesn't cost someone to actually get my service and it costs them significantly less, I have no issues with that. If you say, you came from Easton's platform, I'm cool. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. We'll deal with the smaller retainer. So for me, it was a no brainer.
Yes. Well, thank you for trusting in us because I think we didn't even have like an app when we talked last time. So thank you for trusting with us
Correct.
early on, man. We appreciate you joining early, and I appreciated the conversation. How can people find you, and what is one thing you want to leave people with?
Yeah, you can find me, if you just Google Vantage Point Strategies, that's the website. It's going to change to vpscfo.com just to let people know. And then on socials, Vantage Point Strategies, you can find me. You can find my name, Jordan Wilkerson, on there. And then I guess one thing to leave people with is just love one another. I feel like it's such a cliche thing, but love in everything you do, even in running a small business to business owners, love the clients you serve. I love all my clients. I try and lead with that. And if you lead with love, then nothing really bad can ever happen, right? So,
I think you do. I think you give a good energy. I think you get good vibes if it's over this podcast or in person when we met. I think you give very good approachable vibes. So I think you are doing just that. I agree. I think we need more love. I think we need more positivity. I think we need more people leading with strong values. So I just wanted to say, Jordan, again, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you. If you could stay in the room after and then we can talk after. I think it was a great conversation. I think people will learn a lot from just diving into your niche and into your business. So again, man, thank you so much for coming on.
yes, I appreciate you so much and the platform that you're building. I'm excited to see where it goes, but I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks, man.